I'm back in a Lotus. Today is a very special day for me because today is the first time I'm driving an Elise with the original Rover K-Series engine. Despite the fact that I've driven quite a few different Lotus cars over the last few years, I've only ever driven one Series 1 Elise, and that was a Honda converted car from Essex Autosport. Now, it was a hell of an experience, but there's quite a few people out there who are very wedded to the car and its original configuration with the little K-Series. Now, we all know that the K-Series is generally famed for being less than perfectly reliable. However, it's also much loved and much missed by both the Lotus and Caterham crowd. And today I shall hopefully find out why. Now, this car belongs to my kindly host Dominic. It's his very own 135. Now, I've never been much of an expert in terms of the Series 1 cars for one simple reason. I don't actually like them that much. And that is certainly a controversial thing to say as a Lotus fan, but I just never really like the styling of them. It's curious because as I spend more time looking at it and I appreciate more of where the car comes from, I get it. I just don't like it. I've been told by a few people that the styling was quite heavily influenced by the Ferrari Dino. And I've spent a fair bit of time looking at Ferrari Dinos recently for various reasons, and you can certainly see that. The headlights in particular and the side intakes both heavily reminiscent of that famous Italian. The front vents also are pure GT40. But the reality is, what makes the Elise Series 1 so special is its commitment to purity. This was Lotus's reinvention of the fabled 7. The original plan for the Elise, in fact, didn't even include doors or a roof, but legislation meant that those were going to be necessary. The first cars had a 118 horsepower version of the venerable K-Series, which, even when they came out, wasn't really a lot. Fortunately, these are flyweight cars, and so they still move fairly well despite their modest power figure. The 135 underwent a number of changes in both the engine and chassis department to make it quite a bit more desirable. In 1998, they made 50 of them, and in 1999, they made another 35, of which this is one. As the name would suggest, these cars officially put out about 135 horsepower. However, even from factory, they were supposed to be a little on the healthy side. Most apparently put out something between 140 and 145. This one, having been very well cared for and also undergoing a complete engine rebuild, is now putting out around 150. Dominic does care for his car very well, but he definitely doesn't shy away from using it. I've seen him drive it and I know what it can do. He also tracks it quite a bit, takes it on different trips, and he really does enjoy the car. Originally, the 135s were equipped with Coney dampers. Those on this car have since been replaced with Bilstein S2s. The radiator's been upgraded, another known Elise weak point even on my Series 2, that was an issue. Hoses have been refreshed, various bits have been done, brakes and things have just been replaced with improved items. The car's fairly faithful to original, but it's just a little bit better in every way. Sitting in this thing is just an experience, a real proper treat. It's such a tiny little thing, and for this test road that I've been using all week, it really is the perfectly sized car. I've brought all sorts of things down here, but truly, if ever there were a Lotus Road, this is it. You have only 5 ratios, but this gearbox is actually pretty nice to use. It's not quite as slick as the Toyota item that you got in later cars, but it's certainly good enough. Oh, it sounds lovely. Car is so easy to place on the road, and steering is delicious and light. It's actually pretty comfortable too. One of the things about the Elise is that because of the way it's designed, you don't even get much buffeting in here either. I gotta be honest, on these roads, with the roof down, this weather, this scenery, this is driving heaven. Pure and simple. Now, had I driven the 400 miles it took me to get here, in the rain, in this car, I may not have been quite so enthralled by it. Heeling towing isn't quite as instinctive as some other cars that I've driven, but we'll see if I can get a little bit better at it as we go along. One thing that's certainly better than my old 111R is the brake pedal. On the early Toyota cars, they have about an inch and a bit of just mush where the pedal moves but no retardation takes place, and that then makes heeling and towing nearly impossible, and it's just a bit of a frustration. It's a real dynamic failing in a car that's otherwise quite brilliant. Now this car, as you might expect, has little to nothing in the way of driver aids. There's not even a servo for the brakes, but it just doesn't need it. The very last thing I drove down here was a 981 Cayman S. By most measures, a very sharp, well-judged sports car. Driving one of these makes it feel like a bit of lardy cake, it really does. This thing is just so sweet. If you have never experienced an Elise in your life, you need to go and drive one. And here's the thing, it doesn't matter which one. It really, really doesn't. I can't recall driving a bad Elise. There are some that I like more than others, but the truth is, what connects them is far more than what separates them. Every single one of them is a true driver's car. The engine revs out nicely, and quite unlike my Toyota engine, there's no step change. The old 111R's got a sort of VTEC-like kick from the little 1.8, which means when you're below about 6,000 RPM, it's all right, but it's just not that strong. This is far more linear and progressive. As with any Elise, after a few minutes, the car basically melts away, and it just becomes about you and the road. Everything you want to do, it does. And in fact, even the exhaust on this is very well judged. Dom ran this car for a little while with a decat on it, and then he decided that he didn't like the concept, he didn't like the noise, and when he dynoed it, he found that it wasn't really even making any more power. It was making 1 horsepower, 1, but losing him about 3 torques. And so he thought, you know what, sod it, the standard cat's going back on, and so this car is judged brilliantly. Heeling and towing does get easier, it does get better. And the funny thing is that with the Series 1, some of my criticisms of the modern car are no longer valid. These 20-odd-year-old Vauxhall Storks were sort of more acceptable 20 years ago. Less so in 2019 when Lotus are trying to charge £100,000 for a car with them. I even recognise some of these buttons down here from my Buddy Lorry's 106. Now, if you're looking at buying any Elise, but a Series 1 in particular, I would say that the best thing to do is to exercise extreme caution. There's quite a few of them out there that have had a very hard life, and that doesn't necessarily make them bad cars. However, they need to have been appropriately maintained. So when you're looking at cars, look for cars that have had specialist maintenance, have got a nice history file, talk to the owner. I advise with these things buying privately where you can, or buying from a specialist. One of the best people out there for these kind of cars would be Will Blackham. Alternatively, speak to Jamie at Bell & Colville. He's often got a stock of usually slightly newer cars too if you want to buy something a little bit more modern. As a styling exercise, the 135 has a few changes in comparison to the regular Series 1 Elise. It's got headlight covers, which curiously is something that some Dinos also have, and it's got a slightly different wheel design. The wheels I actually really like. Unfortunately, this colour, I don't. Silver is just such a colour to me on a car. Although I'm not really fond of the Series 1's overall shape, I think there are other colours that it wears quite a bit better. One piece of advice that I give to anyone looking at buying a Lotus of any description is try and buy one in a bolder colour as you can. That simply is a safety issue. If you're driving a brightly coloured car, you are more likely to be seen. You'd be amazed the number of people I've known who've bought one of these cars in a sort of dull, dour colour, like a British racing green or something, then you drive along and you find all sorts of people pulling out in front of you because they simply don't see you. I mean, this car is on its home roads, and you can tell. I know that Dominic spent a hell of a lot of time going down this exact road, and he's got this car set up absolutely spot on. One of the great misconceptions about Elises is that they are uncomfortable cars. That is simply not true. I have not driven a Lotus that I would ever describe as uncomfortable. In fact, this is quite the opposite. What you find with some of them is that they are very noisy places to be. My 111R in particular, with its silly Larini exhaust, after about an hour you weren't aching but you were tired simply from the sonic bombardment that you suffered in the cabin. So this car being a little quieter is actually quite a bit better for it. Therefore, if you do want to undertake a long journey in one of these, I can highly recommend some earplugs, headphones or anything like that, because I will be truly grateful for it. I've spent the best part of 3 years waiting to drive one of these cars, and I would be lying if I said it was in any way revelatory. I've driven so many other Lotus before that it's not really anything brand new, but I understand why people love it. That K series has got plenty of character, it's certainly got plenty of firepower, it feels quick enough. For a road like that, that is all you need. Yes, you can put more through the car if you really wanted to. You could Honda swap it, you could get a later car with a Toyota engine, you could get a supercharged car, you can do all sorts of things. But the sort of 150 horsepower that this car has for that kind of driving is just right. It means you can enjoy the rest of the car, you can enjoy what it's good at, you're not doing silly speeds, but you're having a really good time. And for me, that's precisely what a Lotus should be about. It's you, the car, the road, and as little as possible getting in between. So it's really no great surprise that the Series 1 Elise gets a big thumbs up from me. I still wouldn't have one because to me a sports car you've got to want, and I just don't look at one of these and want them. But if you do look at one and want it and you haven't driven one, go and do it. There's only one thing I'll warn you about. If you drive it, you'll probably have to buy it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed this. Please like, comment below and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.